Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are tuning in from. This is the BS Buddies podcast. I'm your host, Joe. That's your host, Ian. And we're back with the second part of my retail journey, if you want to say that. Funnily enough, in between recording the first part and this part, Ian and I had terrible weeks at our current jobs, which we won't get into. And I also met up with one of my past managers from the job I'm talking about. So he added at least one more story to the list. And yeah, Ian, how are you doing?
Oh, I have to say for a Monday, things didn't go too bad, all things considered. Like Joe said, our previous respective weeks were, as the kids say, crap. Uh, had some work drama that I know, much to you guys' disappointment, we won't be getting into, but mine, at least, anyways, is still just a little too fresh. And I don't need any sort of recourse following me for any words I may or may not have said online about that. However, this week is starting off going pretty well for me, Joe, because drum roll, little bit of a, well, I shouldn't say bit of a reveal, but I went and I took a permit to carry class this past weekend.
Did you
So
pass?
I did, surprisingly enough.
You gotta
I
mention that.
I hit the target at least twice. At least twice.
I'm glad you can do that at 28 after being in the Marines for 4 years.
My marksmanship has not suffered at all. Before I was at one, now I'm at least two. So big steps over here, Mr. Big Step Man. They call me Big Shoes. They don't call me big. Don't call me Big Shoes. I don't have. I have little feet. I have like it's like size 9.5, 10 on a good day. Little feet.
Okay. um, Maybe in a few weeks we'll talk about our current jobs and some weird stuff that's happened there. But gonna pick back up where I last left off. I was a plumbing department manager at 22 years old during COVID, and just having a blast, but not really.
You were guarding the toilet paper and yelling at old ladies about the cost of Lysol and beating people with wooden boards. Stay back. Stay out of my personal space. Back with you. You got the ick. It's like what's that scene from, oh god, is it It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's like, grab hold, I got you. Oh no you don't, and he just takes the board and he pushes down on him. I'll have to find that meme and send it to you. I love that one.
But I wanted to start off by saying the tasks I was given. Like, I was told some of this stuff before I started at the position, at like bringing it up in the interview process. And after it was told all the stuff that had to be done in the department, like the general manager is like, you look anxious about it. Like, are you ready for this? It's like, you literally just told me to flip the entire department in a 180. Yeah, I'm a little anxious, but
Circumvent everything I know about retail in and any leadership experience in general. Just turn all that on his head. No pressure, bud. You got this.
so I don't like throwing people under the bus, but it sounded like the manager prior to me did not do a great job at keeping the department clean. And what I mean by that is there was a area where we were supposed to have product in, and it just had a bunch of like special order returns, just stuff that shouldn't be there. Nothing was planned as it should have been. So got shown that, and then like light bulbs needed fixing, and a part in the back area, like the special order returns, they just threw a bunch in the back, just, and no one can really see up there. Like, you have to be looking for it. It's like you got to get all these priced and make sure people can see them, whatever. And like the, I don't know if this is a common term, but the overstock. So this product on top of the aisles, It's like there's just garbage up there that needs to be cleaned. There's just a lot of areas that need to be worked at. One of the big things I was honestly really proud of, which in the grand scheme, not it's not like I flipped an entire aisle, but there was a big section of plumbing fittings. So there's like 100 per little area, and all the holders for the price tags were like yellow. They're supposed to be clear.
Oh yeah, beautifully colored. They call that finely aged, Joe. That's how you know that they're
Vintage.
well adept to surviving the harsh elements.
It took a while to get all of those replacements in, especially during COVID, but finally came in and I replaced like a whole 12-foot by 6-foot section, like just going, replacing them all, and it like people came by, my coworkers, and like, wow, like didn't really realize how bad it was until you actually put new ones on.
You know, Joe, I hate to say it, but it kind of sounds to me that you got into this position and they were like, you know what sounds like we can use this man for? Janitorial services.
It was
And you
pretty much
just
that.
glorified janitor.
Another a situation that happened in terms of aisle changing. One of the stories, they we had a specific team that would work on like aisle changes. Like an aisle has some work that needs to be done. Like they changed the designs around a little bit. We had a team for that, like a 2 or 3 person team. And one of the times, I had 2 aisles that like the whole thing needed to be changed, and they go through one of the assistant general managers. Okay, and they were working on it
Okay.
on and off for the week. And then on Friday, or no, it was Thursday. Thursday night, I didn't notice it. One of the people just emptied like half an aisle, shelves, product, everything, put it in carts, put it in the back aisles, and said they were going to work on it the next day. They didn't show up, or they had the next day off. And I had,
Premeditated.
if you remember how my schedule worked, I was supposed to be off at like noon Friday and then have the weekend. And my sister came in from Arizona and she was having the whole weekend back home. So like I wanted to be out of there.
Let me
The
free. Let me be free.
the assistant GM said I had to set that whole half aisle. And when I'm talking half aisle, like, I like, let's say Target, like you go in like the bread aisle and it's like 30-ish feet long, give or take.
Yeah,
Imagine
right.
half of that just gone. You have to reset it, but the product I had to put in was like HVAC, like metal
Hmm.
piping, all that fittings, and he told me I could not leave until it was done. I got in at 6 in the morning, and I'm stressed as all hell because
You're
I
like, oh
just want to
no.
go home and see my sister, who I barely got to
Nice.
see. And it was me and one of the ladies on the team, and like she was apologizing up a wall, and I I'm like it's not your fault at all. She was really sweet, but the general manager was pinning it on me and that it was my fault that it was like this. It's like, how did you not know about this? It's like, well, if they tuck it away in a back aisle, I got all this other area to do. Like, you want me to help people constantly, but you don't want me to help in aisles. Like, I got in trouble for that another time. Like, I was fully focused on changing aisles. They're like, no, we need you to help people, get someone else on it. It's like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, oh god, I can't stand that. The whole back and forth, the hypocritical side of it, really.
which
I would have
happened
looked at
at a separate time with something else. Like during COVID, they were talking about payroll, 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 payroll. Like we're missing payroll. And for those of you who don't know, at least in this company, managers get hit on payroll bonuses. It's like a weekly thing. If you make payroll, you get money. If you miss payroll, so you spend more than you make, you get a hit. And at the end of the year, like you will either get fined or you will get your bonus. So
one of those two.
we were missing left and right, and we didn't have a lot of people. So they're at one point they're like, hey, instead of working your 50 hours, we need you to work as close to 40 as possible. I'm like, okay. And me
All
and
right.
me and my assistant sat down with the assistant general manager, and he changed our schedules. And we're like, yep, 40 and a half. Make sure we're just right over that 40 mark.
Perfect. We got her locked in.
3 weeks later, I get in trouble for working 40 and a half hours. And I was told I wasn't working enough. It's like,
Oh,
what? And they said it's because my assistant was on vacation. But you think my bosses would tell me like, hey,
your
just
assistant's
just
on
to make
vacation.
just to make sure, like, and they have to approve my schedule.
I would have brought that up. I would have looked at them and been like, "You approved this. You are the one who decided that this was okay."
They told me the week after, and then it's like, okay, do you want me working 40 or what? Because they were very concerned about payroll.
40 or 50? Which one is it? Because I'm about to give you 0.
So that was a whole thing as well. And then training, keeping up on that. I had like morning stalkers. They usually came in 5 to 9, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then they left. And it was my responsibility to make sure that whatever training came up, they had to do. I had one person, college student, would come in from 5 to 6. I work at 6. And I asked my assistant multiple times, can you make sure this training gets done? And like he was going to finish out the year and then retire. So he was just kind of clocked out.
Yeah, didn't
It's like-
care.
So
like,
he didn't get
whatever,
it
I'm just
done.
here.
And like they talked to me about it. I'm like, I'm trying. Like I'm telling my assistant to get this done. And
It's not
along with
getting
all this
done.
other stuff. So then October 2022 comes and randomly get called to the back. And I see, and like the office was upstairs. And I see the assistant GM, the one I've had, he was on me for months. He was the one with the aisle. He was the one with the schedule. And I see the general manager. And they're both walking up the stairs, and I'm walking behind them. Sit down.
Like,
I'm like, this is not good.
this isn't gonna. This is about to be a wonderful conversation that I'm sure I will enjoy and appreciate.
I want to preface this with the day before, I talked to the HR, and I was close with her when I worked there, and I told her, like, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I'm not being told anything. I'm not being sat down and said, hey, I need you to work on this, 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 this. And can
Going
we
by the
like make a
seat of my
plan?
pants. Yeah.
Like I'm just kind of guessing. It's like I think I'm doing a good job, but my bosses aren't telling me. And like she was kind of praising me. She's like, "Yeah, you're like the department looks great. Like your people are a big fan of you. Like
Killing it.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I'll go with that." So then the next day, walking up to the office and sit down, and they're like, they were bringing up like the training and the aisle situation, and Then they told me that my emails weren't clean enough. And I'm like, I just cleaned, like, they wanted it sorted and whatever. Like, I told him, and he can see my like emails and how it looks. And I told him I cleaned it up 3 days ago because you've told me that it hasn't looked good, so I cleaned it up. I can't really remember the full conversation. Those are the points I remember.
Clip notes.
Like, and if you haven't really understood, like, I'm being set up for failure.
Yeah.
And I got told by the general manager the following Monday I would be in a new department full time. They were demoting me. I went from a department manager. They didn't even bother trying to put me in an assistant spot. They just sent me all the way down to full time.
Sounds like a classic case of faux nepotism. They're setting you up for failure so they can bring in somebody that they want.
Yep.
For shame. For shame. Did they even have a good excuse why, or was it just all the aforementioned reasons? And they're like, well, our expectations.
The aforementioned reasons. I never had a sit down. They never said, hey, like, you need to do X, Y, and Z, or we're going to find someone else. Or they didn't even sit me down and say, hey, you need to work on this or you're going to get written up. I had 0 write-ups as a department manager.
Oh, God.
They just kind of gave up.
Some people should not be in charge. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
And then when I went back, I was like holding back tears because I was like so upset because I was so blindsided. And I just told my assistant, like, hey, I'm out of plumbing next week, like, just some personal stuff, and just went home and was very upset. And I went home and talked to someone I was close with at the store at the time, and he's like, you're kidding, like, you just got demoted. Like, I was so mad at that point. I told, like, once word got around, they're like, are you kidding me? And they didn't sit you down. It was just like, that was it. I'm like, yep. Some people were saying, like, it's the end of the year, so they're probably just trying to save as much money as they can before the end of the year. Which, out of all the departments, I did not want to be in that area. Like, I just could not. I've only heard like bad things. I mean, people enjoy it, but once you get into like designing, it's a lot math based, and I'm not good at math at all. It just stresses me out. Luckily, it was slow season, so it was mostly just stocking lumber, which I ended up, after the demotion, I ended up leaving 6 months later. Like, once it started to get into busy season, I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this all summer.
Go on.
Come the turning of the year 2021, I mentioned the payroll bonuses, and like we were missing, so I was going to get fined and all this. I got my full bonus. Full payroll, didn't get a single fine. I got a $5,000 check for being the department manager and having no payroll fines.
Tons of guns.
They had to have adjusted it like, oh, it's COVID. We're just going to give you your bonuses because, like, the numbers were off. We weren't expecting that.
Either that or it was a compensation prize. Like, oh, please don't come after us for being jerks about the whole ordeal. You can be the most competent worker in the world. I can't save you from the wrath of incompetent leadership.
That was very frustrating time. And I found a job with some friends for a few months, which didn't go great. But then after that, found a new job with a new company that I really enjoyed, but I left because I moved to Wisconsin. Like, I wish I could have just went, if they had a store here, I would have went there in a heartbeat. But yeah, it still bugs me to this day. There's still some hurt feelings. I still have not stepped foot in that store since I left. I even had the HR lady like add me on Facebook a few years ago, and I have not answered it. Like the reason being, I should back this up. The reason being, I was there for 4 or 5 years. I was a manager for 3 of those years, roughly. I had someone in my department who worked there for about a year, and he was an assistant manager for a bit. And like he got a letter saying like good luck on your endeavors, and like everyone was saying goodbye. I didn't get a letter. I didn't get a good luck and a goodbye from the general manager or the HR. I was literally next to the HR, and she knew it was my last day, and she walked out. Didn't say a word to me.
God. Oh, that's the type of stuff that just really, it grates me. It's like a cheese grater against my soul. I can't stand that type of stuff. I hate petty people with a
Like
burning passion.
the assistant GM just asked me about the job I was going to like a week before I left. And then the other assistant GM who I loved, like he wished me luck. Like he had no hurt feelings. Like he was very blunt but very like good about it. It's like, hey, get this done. Need this done. But with the assistant GMs, like they would rotate departments every quarter or whatever. But I think I got the same one for like half a year, and he just ran me. So after all that, I'm gonna talk about some stories.
That's the
Make me a
anchor.
little.
Next time you walk into that store, you should just walk in with all the confidence in the world. Those doors swing open. Just go up to the phone, just punch in whatever it is that they do to call
I
over the
still
PA
remember
system,
the code.
and just pick up the phone and be like, "What's up, bitches? I'm back." Just to
I
really get them worked up.
I think the general manager is still there at that store, the same one that I left with,
100%.
and because talking to my buddy, like he brought up the guy's name, and I'm like, oh, I don't think he knew the full story. I told him like a summarized version, because I mean he knew all the background stuff. I didn't have to explain it all to you guys, but like I told him, and I don't even think he knew until we met up a couple weekends ago. And he's like, "Yep, that sounds like something they would do. That sounds like that GM."
I just do not understand the practice of burning bridges with your good employees. Never understood that.
That makes no sense. But to end this episode on a more fun note, I got some stories. And
let's hear them.
Well, we'll start with when I was a cashier, and this is where I met my buddy. I'm gonna try not to say his name because I don't want to edit names out anymore. But
the next 10 minutes of this episode will just be one long.
Funnily enough, he was the first manager I met out of the 3 in that department, and he gave me like the worst handshake I've ever had in my life. Like his hand was like limp, and I'm like, oh no, I got a bad feeling about this guy. But like we're really good friends. The one thing, I became the 5 a.m. cashier, so get there at 5, just make sure everything's clean and good to go for 6 a.m. open. And so I got to be with the manager, and they would rotate, so sometimes it was different people, but every time it was him, he would always challenge me to fight him shirtless in the parking lot. And that was our normal thing that stuck the rest of the time.
Hey, you ready for that brawl? Take a rain check today? You got me next time.
It was really funny when he would say it at like 9 a.m. when like the most amount of people are there and just hear like, what did you just ask Joe to do?
Cage match in the cart corral. Give him, give him the cart. Give him the shopping cart. Just like rolling it in there, just fists flying, full on brawl, beat down. Yeah, that'd be something to see.
Another funny story that involved him. Um, and I thought this situation was weird to begin with. I was working at like the rental center up front, and it was nighttime during like January, February, whatever. And like went outside to like help load something, came back in, and someone came up, and it looked like he was recording me, but I couldn't tell for sure. Like his phone was like this up, like
Like, just like
usually
chest
like
height.
people have it like, no, it was like shoulder height.
Oh,
Usually
like,
people, yeah, like that. Like people usually have it at their chest and like close to them. He had it out a little bit in shoulder height. And I thought it was weird. I can't really say anything because I have no proof. But he asked me a question, whatever. And he leaves. Like 10 minutes later, my buddy comes up. He's like, dude, uh, did you just have someone come up and ask you some stuff? I can't remember exactly how the conversation went. It's been 8 years. But I'm like, yeah, it seemed like he was recording me. He's like, yeah, he came to talk to me because he said like you were tweaking on drugs. Like what? And I'm like, what gave him that impression? And he said because I kept like putting my hand up to my nose repeatedly and it seemed like I was sniffing. I'm like, dude, it's winter. I went outside. I'm not just going to like wipe my nose when I'm trying to help this guy. Like I'm just going to try and like
Oh yeah, here, hang on, sir. Look. Yeah. He just like that. Give me a minute, sir. Let me clear. All right, yeah. How can I help you? Just big old like loogie right there on the floor. Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Like
that's
I
a
did.
real good look.
Like I wanted to do it in between, so I didn't seem like I was grossing anyone out. So it's just like stopping a few times, like making sure like I don't sneeze or something. Nope, tweaking.
Drugs. It's got to be drugs. It really baffles me what goes through some people's mind when they go out just looking for a problem to have. And it's like, you just pick some random, pun intended, random Joe Schmo, and you're like, yeah, that guy. I want to ruin his life today. And
I
was it an older gentleman?
no,
Hmm.
it was like middle aged, like 30 to
You know what? That
40.
still tracks. That still tracks. That makes sense.
I I have been offered food at work before, which we just get told no because obviously don't accept food from strangers. Someone tried so hard for me to like they had like a whole thing of cupcakes. And I'm like, I had to tell them no 5 times at least. Like, no, I don't want that.
I don't know why, but in my mind, I'm imagining like a customer coming through. I'm sorry, I don't have any cash in lieu of payment. Can I offer you a sandwich? It's like, as amazing as that sandwich looks, I'm sorry, I cannot sell you this box of 16 penny nails for a club sandwich. That's not even premium grade turkey. I can see it's saggy. Get that away from me. It's got the cranberry wheat bread. You get a handful of nails for that. Give it that here.
You get 3 nails.
You can have 3 nails for the cranberry bread.
One other thing. I keep thinking of like cashier stuff because that was crazy. There would be a guy, a contractor, who would come in so often and he would make returns. Because at this place, we would do no receipt returns.
Very nice
And
policy.
it is very nice. Like, there's stipulations with it, but I mean, this guy took advantage of it wholeheartedly. I don't want to say his name because it's very catchy. But this contractor would come in like once a quarter or like once every 4 or 5 months and just return stuff he didn't use. Thing is, not all of it was the company's product. So, like, if it didn't scan, you just gave it back to him and he'd take it. But he would have 10 to 20 cart loads of stuff.
Oh my God.
So, the store told him that if he ever has to do this return, to call in advance so then they could have someone specifically designated to do the return and not slow anything down. I did one return. Usually a standard return, it's like, hey, here's a few items. Okay, do you want it an in-store credit or on your card? Card. Okay. 3 minutes. It's like very easy process. This
Done
return took 45 minutes to an hour. One guy. At one point, I think it was with this one, I held the receipt in my hand. This dude got $8,000 back
Wow.
in in-store credit.
What a handy return for in-store credit. And be like, same time next month? Yeah, I guess.
I held it up to my eyes, and for the record, I'm 6'4". Held it up to my eyes. It wrapped down to my ankles, came back up to my eyes, and came down a little bit after.
Oh my
That's how
God.
big the receipt was.
Dude had like a 15-foot receipt. I used to think it was crazy. My dad used to go to that store a lot when I was younger, and we'd walk out of there with purchase receipts that were taller than I was. But that is a whole new level of beast. Holy moly.
And then like we would have carts for the different departments, so we could just put it in the cart. The departments could come grab it and put it away because they knew where it was. We had to tell each department that this guy was coming in and doing returns, and please grab carts. I think plumbing was always the worst. Like it was like 2 or 3 carts, like automatically.
Oh, please be ready. This guy's coming back with his literal busload of crap.
Yep.
Whole store goes into like red alert. You hear just all hands man your battle stations. The return individual is here, and woo, boo, you got like alarms going off. He's here, duck and cover. Carts flying around the store. Some woman clutching her baby. What's going on? Man, get to cover. The cart train is arriving.
Those are the main ones that I can think of from being a cashier. Now for the manager ones. I'll start with hardware manager because I had spent over 2 years in that department. Very chaotic department. I had a lot of fun, even though I was very anxious and stressed about the whole.
Everything.
You heard it in the first part.
Part one.
On
Go
Monday.
watch part one.
But my hardware manager and my buddy up front, like I'm good friends with both of them still, thank God, because they're awesome people. But they're interesting. There was one time, like, front end manager, one of my buddies, was in charge of security as well, making sure people weren't stealing. And he has so many stories on that. Like, we talked about that a little bit too. And then my hardware manager also like helped, and like they were pretty good friends. And there was one time someone, like, they saw someone was stealing, and they can't like apprehend, but they can follow, and they called the cops. And then by the time the cops came, like, the guy was getting out of the store, and my buddies were outside, and the police was foot chasing this dude who had stolen whatever. The officer falls, and I think he like broke his arm. Like, they found out later, broke his arm. But
oh my God.
But my buddies, once the officer fell, they started laughing.
Oh no. Oh
so
no.
the police department didn't find that funny. And for a long while after, they didn't try very hard to get to the store fast. They basically were like, we got other stuff to do, but we'll be there as soon as we can. And like,
You
instead
know,
of being there in like 10 minutes, it's like, yeah, 20 to 30. We'll get there eventually.
if you really wanted to speed him up, you should have been like, "Oh, we got a guy. He's running away. He's stealing something out of the hardware section. We can't get there for like another 20 minutes. That's fine. That's fine. We've got Joe is on track right now. He's gonna apprehend him. Oh my God, he tackled him into the dirt. You guys go, we'll be right there. And then they show up. I thought you said you apprehended him. Yeah, it might have stretched the truth just a smidgy. We realized Joe was just chasing his paper that he dropped in the parking lot. Our bad.
Yeah,
He didn't tackle the guy, he tripped.
they would never show up after. I have so many stories. I might have to cut a couple of these. Um, one of the fun times, opening as a manager, a new manager. You clock in, you start getting your stuff put away, and get your radio and the phone on, and then the assistant GM comes up, frantic, and says, "You gotta come with me now." It's like, okay, yeah, sure.
What's happening?
Go over. And a pallet fell from the top of the racking.
Ooh.
Luckily, no one was nearby, but it must have fell like 10 minutes before I got there. On top of that, it was like garden chemicals.
Oh, no.
It was stacked like 5 feet high. So, a fun thing that, if you don't know, because my department didn't know, garden chemicals will freeze. Some of them will. They'll freeze. And when you bring them inside, if you leave them outside during the winter and then bring them inside a heated building in the middle of winter, they don't freeze anymore. They turn back to liquid all at once. So it went from being solid to liquid, and basically they stacked it all more on one side, so it just tipped and fell like 25 feet down to the ground.
Oosh.
So that's what I got to do at 6:30 that morning, clean up garden chemicals.
Hey, kid, would you like a lesson in thermodynamics? Great, follow me.
Guess who was in the leader in making sure that never happened again, so someone wouldn't have to clean up garden chemicals at 6:30 in the morning. I will say, like, I got very, I mean, as stern as I could have at 20 years old and very anxious of this. It's like, we're gonna stack them like 3 feet high max. We're not going any higher. And also, we're going to bring them in before they freeze, so this doesn't happen. More about stuff falling over.
Oh, no. You're just waiting for the story of like the domino effect. One aisle fell into the other aisle, into the other, and then just.
Not quite that bad, but still very bad. It was Friday, so department manager comes in, and I'm about to leave for my weekend. Like right at noon, and the store was going through a remodel. Right at noon, we were talking and like, hey, this happened yesterday while you were gone. Loud crash from somewhere.
Always an inviting sign.
And me and the manager go over to see what happened. Well, they put up racking, and they were going to put all like the crown molding and like long length stuff from building materials. They didn't secure the rack to the floor, so a whole aisle a molding just fell. Whole thing,
Just
metal,
over it
wood.
went.
Um,
Hey,
I
kid, you want a lesson in centrifugal and centripetal forces? Great, follow me.
I asked the department manager, I'm like, do you need me to stay? He's like, nah, we're good. And I told him, I'm glad because I didn't want to stay anyway, and I was probably going to leave regardless, but I wanted to sound
I just
nice.
wanted to be, I just wanted to be polite. Thanks for giving me the okay. Bye.
I think I told him good luck, swiped my badge to leave, and was done for the weekend.
Walk out the door before they change their mind. Go, 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 go.
This one, this next one was the probably the funniest one out of all of them, all things
Oh no.
considered. Because just absolute chaos ensued within 10 minutes. So it's, I want to say it's probably like this time of year, March ish, probably a little before. We still had Christmas displays up, but it was after the season, I believe. And because someone wanted a display, and the only way we sold displays is if it was the last one. So I'm like, yeah, sure, let me go inside this little corral we made to display everything. Grab my knife, go to cut the tag off, and I slice my thumb like right at the joint,
Ah.
right here.
Ugh.
So I'm bleeding. I say, hey, just give me a second, and I get one of my team members. I'm like, hey, I just sliced my thumb open. Can you go help them, please? And I gotta think. I had opened, so I was gonna be able to leave at like between 12 and 3, whenever the department manager was coming in. And this is at 11:50, so it's like he's just about to get here.
I'm good.
And as I go up to the front and like fill out paperwork, and then I gotta wait for someone to take me to the hospital for a little bit. I get a call from the department manager, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not feeling great today," which he never did this. So like for it to happen on this day, like makes the story funny.
Cosmic
And
karma.
as I'm trying to talk to him about me slicing my thumb, the team member I had help like get the display. He said, "Hey, I have to run home because going over the corral, I split my pants wide open."
Talk about a bad day
I
for everything. Got
I
illness, injury, wardrobe malfunctions.
talked to the manager. I'm like, I just sliced my thumb. Our guy just split his pants open, so he has to leave. And now you're not coming in. And he's like, well, like I could force myself to come in. I'm like, no, dude, like you're sick. You're never sick. Take the time off. But this was like the worst time you could have ever called in.
Why me? All right, get well soon. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Click.
So then the HR takes me to the hospital, and that was a thing. I had to take a breathalyzer test to make sure I was not drunk. I think
Make
I
sure
had to
you're
take a
sober.
urine test as well, which I went in the bathroom. She locked it, and they can control the toilet flushing from outside. So if you're messing with anything, and start doing the test, and as I'm finishing up, the toilet automatically flushes. And I just hear the handle going nuts, and I am in no condition to like open the
I'm not
door.
decent. I'm not decent.
And like she was mad. I'm like, it automatically flush. I swear, like if you need another test, fine. But it was not me.
I
Like,
didn't do it.
but basically they put some glue on and called it good. And I got there at about 12:30. I was done at 2:30. I went back to the store, made sure everything was good. and I'm scheduled till 3. But since the manager isn't there, I decided, hey guys, are you good for like 2 or 3 hours? I'm going to go home, eat, rest a minute, and then I will come back from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and close.
Oh,
So I worked
man.
6 to 3 technically, 2 hours of that being in the hospital, come back, make sure everything's okay, leave for 2 or 3 hours, and come back and finish the shift.
Oh my God. You were feeling brave that day. Thumb was dangling, non-functional. I can do this. I can push through.
I wrote down some other ones, but we're almost pushing 50 minutes. And I mean, the other ones are smaller, like just doing dumb stuff and dumb retail stuff, uh, being berated on the phone.
I think you've covered a pretty good menagerie of just about everything so far.
That's probably the best story out of all these. Like just
Store
because
was a
there's
battleground.
so much chaos just all at once, and it's stories that people who have never worked retail probably never have heard. Like retail, you do get close knit with the people you work with, depending on who. I've worked in a few retail jobs, but as long as you stick together as your department, like you're good, because then you can just vent to all the other people. It's like, yep, had that happen 2 weeks ago. Similar thing.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
you got that camaraderie, the shared suffering.
I definitely had. I want to say when I worked in hardware, I had one of the best teams. It was like just a mismatch of people and personalities, like very differing, but like all coming together and just knowing that our department was pure chaos. It was always going to be chaos, the biggest department in the store, and just accepting that and knowing things are going to go wrong, but knowing that we can like just come to each other and be like, even me as a manager, I went to my team members and like they gave me a real hard time, especially being so young, but like I knew they always had my back, and it's like, you need help with this, I'll drop everything and I'll help you, but I'm gonna make fun of you for it later if I need to.
And then keep this piece of information tucked away for when I need it most.
One last thing, when the manager promoted up, I was in the head leader of the meetings that we would have every other month, and I said it's gonna be tough without him for a while until we get adjusted. And one of the gals I worked with said, "Wow, I'm so motivated after that motivational speech of saying how we're going to struggle for a while now that the manager's gone." It's like, when you
Well,
put it
maybe
that
you
way,
should. Well, maybe you should pick up the slack a little bit, Janet.
I also had the general manager waiting for me and like telling me to hurry up the meeting. It's like, okay.
Okay, fine. Guess I was going to get some words in and be motivational, but whatever. Don't need that.
Yeah, the same GM that demoted me. So there's that. But
Figures.
thank you for coming to my 2 TED Talks. Figured I've written this down when we first started as stories for episodes, and I mean, I'm happy to finally do it and do a lot of talking, and maybe next time Ian will do some more talking.
Share share some stories of the fun times that we've all had. I don't know. I can't. My lisp cut in there, and it's all downhill.
That's all right. I'm losing my voice after talking so much.
Even mine's getting a little rough. I think it's the weather. We hadn't mentioned the weather yet. I felt like I needed to sneak it in there somewhere.
Can it just be 50 degrees so I can play baseball? That's all I gotta say. But thank you guys for BSing with us. Subscribe to become a bud today, and we will see you next time when maybe we got a story, maybe we got some more improv. I don't really know. My brain's kind of fried right now.
We'll figure it out. We always do. And even if we don't, that's still figuring out. Plan for nothing to go according to plan. But until then, you just take her easy now.